All right, guys. Good afternoon. Week 6. I'm recording this video. I'm also live on YouTube. So hi to the people that are watching live right now. As always, I'm gonna start with some feedback from what you submitted last week. Then I'm gonna cover what we have for this week, which is chapters 10 and 11, leadership and communication. And I'm also going to talk about what you have to submit by Sunday, also some updates. All right, I'll share my screen or not. 1 second. There we go. Okay, there we go. So we are right here. This is what you submitted last night. So LO8 got a mean score of 89%, LG8 82%. I have my notes right here, so I'm just checking. LO9 83% and LG9 93%. So the LG, the learning games are going up. Again, I don't have a specific item to give you feedback. I only have to repeat myself and say the same thing I said last week, especially concerning learning opportunities. Do not rush it. Give it some time, guys. Give it some time. All the information is in the PowerPoint slideshows. So it doesn't make sense if you're missing some items. Just give it some time. Everything is in there. There's no time limit for the learning opportunities. Okay, and again, I can see it. There's a strong correlation between the people who are asking it and their lower than average scores that they're getting. Okay, so don't try to do it on Sunday night. You have a whole week. Okay, that's all I have to say for what you submitted. Today, the last 2 chapters of this section of our book before we go here, and we start with the chapters that have to do with performance. So next week, we're gonna start talking about PST, psychological skills training, and then start talking about some ways to do that. So we'll start with arousal, and we'll keep going. But for this week, again, we have the last 2 chapters of this section of our book that has to do with groups and how they work. First one is about leadership, and second about communication. Not very technical. I think we're going to be fine. We're used, right? LO10, LG10, LO11, LG11. One new thing since this is week number 6, right? This is our second synchronous meeting. I changed the time a little bit. I moved it to same day, Wednesday, but I moved it to 10 to make it a little bit more fair for people who couldn't log in last time. Again, if you go here and click on it, right, you'll see that it's non-mandatory, and the goal is mainly to see each other, talk a little bit, tell me if you have questions. I'm always interested in feedback, right? How I can do things better for all of us. So yeah, again, let's talk. It's 45 minutes. We'll use all of it if we have to. And although it's non-mandatory, and we're going to get all this information, right? You're also getting 10 extra points. So I think it's a win-win-win-win-win situation here. All right. So that's about it concerning what you have to submit until Sunday. I'll stop sharing this, and then I'll try to bring up the slideshows one by one. A lot of information. especially about leadership, a lot of slides. Again, I'm not gonna cover everything. I'm going to cover the things that are very important, and I want to make sure you understand the basics for sure. Right here, share, excellent. Let's see. Boom. Is this working? Yes. All right. So, leadership. A very, very, very interesting topic. A lot of research behind it because humans, as humans, we're interested. We're very, very interested in how to become leaders, and also to who are going to who we are going to choose and give them that responsibility to lead us. So, who's going to lead us in how we can become leaders, right? And we're always starting with definitions. So let's see what leadership is, at least for us and for the purposes of this class. Leadership is a process, and it's the process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. So we have one individual on one side, a group of individuals on the other side. They all share a common goal, but that one person has the responsibility, the skills, and we'll see what else, to just lead them there, move them from point A to point B, wherever they want to go. Okay? Now, a very important, we need to distinguish between two things. What is a manager and what is a leader, right? And we're not necessarily saying that one of them is better than the other, it's just different. And usually we don't find people who can do both. That's rare. So a manager takes care of such things as scheduling, budgeting, and organizing. Okay, and then the leader has that vision and will just show you the direction where we're going. So the leader will pretty much show you where you're going, and the manager will just break down the steps. Okay, a common example that I usually give in class is like you have the head coach and the associate coach or the assistant coaches. And like the head coach usually, gives the vision and the direction. This is what we need to do. This is the way we should go. And then the assistant coaches, right? They break it down and they find ways to do it. Okay. Again, it's not that being a leader is better than being a manager, but if we find a good leader and a good manager, they can work together and create masterpieces. So maybe the director of something is the leader, and then the assistant or the associate director of that health club is that person who's really good with numbers, blah blah blah. And then the director is very good, a person that's very good with, they know the market, they know where they should go, they understand where they are, and it's like, this is the right thing for us, right? And then the people right beneath him or her are the ones who are responsible to actually figure out the way to do it. That's it. I hope it's clear. All right. Now, we can appoint leaders, we can vote, we can hire, right? Or like in the army, in the military, they go up the ranks, right? And then we have emergent leaders that are people who just, something happens, right? Something happens and just they take charge. For whatever reasons, they just step up or step forward, right? And you've seen all these movies, that usually like there's a bunch of soldiers and there's somebody who's leading them, and then something happens and maybe that person, the officer, doesn't really do their job, but somebody else just emerges and just leads the group. So again, it's not that one is better than the other. It's just two ways to break it down like this way. we can pick leaders either to appoint them, right, or they just show up by themselves. Different approaches. I'll go and explain a little bit for each of these 4 approaches. So again, there's so much research about leadership, so much, and we still haven't figured it out concerning if we go this way, which is the trait approach, like which are the characteristics of the leader. And like, so we're trying to reverse engineer it. So we find all the big leaders in history, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and so on and so forth. We're trying to figure out the characteristics, and then based on that to find commonalities, right? But we thought that was a good idea, right? Why not? But then we found so many characteristics that it was impossible to create like a short list. So it was huge. So it didn't really work. And then we had the behavioral approach. So here, we're trying to figure out which are the behaviors, not the traits, not the characteristics, which are the behaviors. Again, reverse engineering it, trying to find the leaders, see what they did, how they behaved, and just trying to figure it out. And here you see 2 things, consideration and initiating structures, right? And they're leaders so that they're focusing on friendship, mutual trust, respect, and so on and so forth between, you know, the leader and the subordinates. And then we have the other kind of leader that is more interested in initiating structure. So that person, you know, cares about rules, regulations, channels of communications, procedural methods. So it's more well-defined patterns of organization. Now, if you have a leader who can do both, awesome. But usually, we don't have. That's not the case. That's not the case. Also, as we're going to see in a little bit, maybe it depends. Maybe depend. Maybe you don't have to be like one thing. Maybe you have to just adjust and move towards consideration or initiating structures based on what's in front of you, right? That's it. And then we have the behavioral approach. So here, if we break down what we just said, we talked about coaches and peer leaders and what's better. So coaches will go towards that instruction part, the structures, right? And that autocratic behavior, like I decide, I'll tell you what's best for you and for us. And the peer leaders are more like, you know, I care about the team, you know, I care about the guys, how am I going to support them? Like have a very good relationship, and it's more democratic. Like, what do you think we should do? Let's all decide. So it's different. I don't care about this. These are some an activity that I usually do in class, and we're trying to figure out which reactive behaviors happen in those videos. You can do it. It's pretty easy. I would encourage you to just watch all these videos if possible. Really short videos. Of course, the actors are just students, so sometimes the acting is interesting, but you'll get the point. Yeah, so here, a lot of times we talk about peer leadership in sport and how it's effective, and there is evidence that shows that, you know, if you're being a peer leader in sport, you are encouraging intrinsic motivation, which is always, you know, or most likely, most of the time, a good thing. You have more social cohesion, as you can see, collective efficacy, and all good things, right? That you want in your team. Yeah, nothing really crazy here. The situational approach. Now, the situational approach says that it depends on the situation. There's not a specific mix of skills or behaviors that you should have. It really depends on the situation. So um, they're not. This approach doesn't have a lot of fans, but it makes sense in some cases, um, because as you can see, situational features have a major influence on leader success in some cases. Okay, and an example that I usually talk about in class, I don't know, there's a legendary um, soccer player, football player from Argentina, Diego Armando Maradona, right? He's not playing anymore, of course, but he was great when he came to play, when he went to play in Italy, right? But then he was also very successful in the national team when he played for the national team. But then he became a coach. Was he successful as a coach? Yeah. So what happened? He was the same person, right? He could lead the team in Italy. He could lead the national team of his own country. But then when he became coach, what happened? So sometimes it does have to do with the situation, right? The interactional approach pretty much says that we need to consider everything. Excuse me, in order to understand leadership, we have the personal and together and the situational factors that we have to consider together. There's nothing set. It really depends. We need to figure out the specifics of the situation and adjust. Mm, yeah. When we talk about sports and the interactional approaches, we have the cognitive mediational model and the multidimensional model. Here, the coach literacy behavior, as you can see, is a function of the coach's personal characteristics, and then also have the situation, and that's what's important here. What does it mean to the athletes? How do they perceive whatever behavior the coach is demonstrating? So here, as you can see the figure, on the left side, we'll have the coach's behavior, right? And then we have whatever response, but altogether comes at how the athlete is perceiving the coach's behavior. So, and that's why we're going to talk about it in a little bit. That's why it's difficult. The more athletes you have, the more difficult it is to satisfy everybody. Right? It's really hard when the same behavior is going to be perceived differently. Some guidelines, nothing really important that you can figure out by yourselves. So here, this is a multidimensional model. I want to stay here for a little bit just to explain it in case you can't figure it out by yourselves. You see that the left side, the antecedents means something leads to something. That's why they're called antecedents. Uh, we have the situational characteristics, the leader characteristics, and the member characteristics, right? I don't want to go into detail, like the age is really important, the experience is important, the gender is important, all of these things, right? Okay. Now on the second column that you see, or however you want to call it, the leader behavior, now we have something that is called required behavior. And then we'll have the actual behavior, and then we'll have the preferred behavior. So this says that the best thing that can happen is if the required, the actual, and the preferred behaviors align and they're the same. If they're not the same, then we'll have issues with the performance and the satisfaction, right? Which that will come back and affect the behavior. So again, what the multidimensional model says is that the most important thing is about the leader behavior. We have the required, the actual, and the preferred behaviors. If they align, if they're the same, if the coach is doing what the coach is required to do, and it's being perceived as the behavior that the athletes would like him or her to do, then we're good. Yeah, those are the antecedents. I'm not going to go into this, nothing too fancy. Of course, we'll talk about the consequences. We'll have, if if they align, the three behaviors align, we have higher satisfaction, higher cohesion, and of course, better or optimal performance. Nothing really here. These are components that affect, that are part of the transformational leadership. These are guidelines, nothing you can cover by yourselves. Servant leadership, that's the last thing I want to talk about for this chapter, because I have personal experience. I have coached and I have taught at Baylor University in Texas. Is a university that is affiliated with faith. So servant leadership was a thing that I was really taught, and it was something that all coaches were encouraged to do. That servant leadership, which is again is about servicing others. It's about me being a leader because I can service you. I can serve you, right? So serving others was really important, and that was a key component of that style of leadership. It's new in research, but I mean I experienced it, so I wanted to share my personal experience. Yeah, nothing really fancy here. You can see that figure that all four components will affect leadership style, situational, followers quality, leaders quality, and whatever leadership style you're going to pick. That's probably the last thing I'm going to talk about. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's not that democratic is better than autocratic. It depends. And the people who know me, they know that that's my favorite answer in all questions. It depends. Why? What do you think it depends? Do you think that if you have a whole team, it's easy to be democratic? No. No, if you have a football team and you can have up to 90 players, what are you going to do? It's not that easy. It's not that easy at all. So again, that affects which kind of style is optimal for this situation. Is it interactive like basketball? Is it coactive like bowling? That again affects the style. Team size affects the style. Available time. If I don't have time, I don't have time for democratic procedures. Somebody has to make a decision. Okay. And then if a team is really, if they're used to specific type of leadership style, like traditionally, it's hard to change it. So that again affects your decision on what's the best leadership style for that situation environment. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm gonna, if I find it, there we go. I'm gonna share the last slideshow for today. I'm gonna cover most of like the beginning and like the middle of the slideshow. At the end, there are things that you either can study by yourselves or they're not that important. Let me try and share so you see what I'm talking about. All right. Communication. We're gonna cover some things that like just pretty basic, I guess already. But even if you do, yeah, I think it's really important to just repeat them one more time. Okay. Communication. Two important quotes just to start. right? You can communicate without motivating, but it is impossible to motivate without communicating. And then the legendary basketball coach from Duke University, people learn how to think by communicating. So in our program, we not only employ an offensive system and a defensive system, we employ a communication system. All right, so we talk about performance, right? Communication is important anyway, but it is really important for performance. Why? Because you can persuade, evaluate, inform, motivate, and solve problems. And all of this are important for performance. Now, it is not just what you say, right? It's not what you say. It's how you make me feel about what you say. So again, connect this to the previous chapter. It's, you can say the same thing in front of 20 people, and half of them may take it differently. Half of them may feel differently. What do you do? Okay. So here's an example, right? I decide I need to communicate something. I code it in a way that I think is appropriate, and then I'm trying to channel it through whatever channel I think is best. So it can be verbal. I can just be like, pat you on the shoulder and be like, good job, whatever, right? And then it's on you. You internalize it and you decode it. Now, if whatever I encoded, you decoded differently, then something is wrong. There are two people now. There are two components, me and you and I. And a lot of times, I'm sure it has happened to you, right? You say one thing and the other person like replies in a way they're like, what are you talking about? That's not what I said, right? So the problem may be either on how you coded the message, the channel you chose it to chose to communicate, and or the way they decoded it for whatever it is. Okay. So having said that, we need to know that we have two types of communication: interpersonal and intrapersonal. So in the interpersonal, there are at least two people. Intrapersonal, it's about me, and we talk to ourselves all the time. Okay, so self-talk is a great example, but we talk to ourselves all the time. When we go to the interpersonal, a specific subtype is the nonverbal. We have the verbal, which is this, like words coming out of my mouth. But we also have the nonverbal, which is me, you know, the posture and the facial expressions of the way I stand, the how high pitch my voice is or becomes at points, and if I'm loud enough, if I'm monotonous, whatever I do, the movement of my hands, all of that. What I'm wearing, what's behind me. There's a lot of things that I'm communicating right now. Either I get it or I don't get it, but it's happening. And what's the important thing here? I always ask this question in class. I'm like, do you think verbal or non-verbal communication, like what's the biggest part? Well, the biggest part is non-verbal. We usually say like 60% is non-verbal. It can be up to 70, right? But most likely up to, like we use the number 60%. Wow, right? So be careful with your non-verbal communication, because it does communicate a lot, if not more than your verbal communication. Okay, that's exactly what I talked about, the second dot, right? Examples, I'm sorry. Nothing really fancy here. Now, asking questions versus telling, I want to stop here for a little bit. What does that mean? I'm presenting to you, right? So you expect me to talk, and teach you something. Okay. Asking questions, though, is a great way to communicate and even say something by just not saying it, but by asking questions and how people think, that really helps them learn. Okay. All right. So a great way to do it is the grow model. So those are questions. So in the beginning, you can have some goal questions. So we sit down and I ask you, like, what would you like to get out of this meeting? What would you like to get out of this lecture, of this video? What would you like to achieve in general, right? And then we move to the second step, which is the reality questions. What have you tried so far? What have you seen others do to accomplish what you want to accomplish or whatever they wanted to accomplish? And then you move to options, option questions, and then so like, what could you do? What strategies most appeal to you, right? And then you finish it up with the what questions. Which of the things we have discussed you think you could do, you would like to try, or as a result of this meeting, what should I expect to see differently next week, next practice, next game, what else? Guidelines for sending messages, I think there's nothing that you don't know. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Although we don't really do all of them a lot of times. Or we may think we do them, but we don't, right? And we're going to talk about the blind spot and biases in a little bit. More guidelines. Six C's of communication, if you want to remember them that way, another way. Electronic communication, just we'll have that slide over here because it's very common lately, right? And you prefer texting than calling people. Like, why is this person calling me? Just text me, you know. But if we prefer texting more, we need to be aware of the specifics of electronic communication and take all these guidelines that we just covered and put them in that framework, in that way of communicating. How can I be specific? How can I, because texting, you know, if I call you, you hear my voice, the tone of my voice. There's a lot of non-verbal. It's more interactive. You can interrupt me. Texting is different. We take out a lot of that non-verbal communication. Although you can put all caps, you know, but you know what I mean. All right, active listening. We talked about that in other classes like 212 and 214, PED 212, 214. You know, active listening is me asking questions, rephrasing, paraphrasing, and making sure I understand. So if I hear you, what you're saying is this, right? That's active listening. I'm also, you know, nodding or just like, oh, raising my eyebrow. That's active listening. Active listening is not, you know, being on the phone, which we see a lot of times. Supportive. Communicate that you're with the speaker, right? So, yeah, I hear you, I understand you. So you have a more of a confirming behavior, right? And that's another way of listening. Listening is an art. It doesn't like I'm just standing in front of you. I can hear you, but it doesn't mean I do listen to what you're saying. Okay. Where listening is now we're getting into our biases, right? And we are all biased. We're all wearing glasses of different colors that make us see the world differently. So again, we talked about that before. You know, it's really important to identify your blind spots first. So when you sit down and you talk with a person of the opposite sex, doesn't make you or older than you, or younger than you, or taller than you, or bigger than, I don't know. The thing is, that we need to be aware of the barriers, right? Be flexible, understand that there's no one way to communicate. There are other ways of communicate. And so are like there are opinions out there. So whatever, like if we feel like something is going towards a breakdown, we need to be aware of that, stop, adjust, come around, find a way. Empathy. Covered it in other classes as well. You know, empathy is me trying really hard to get into your shoes and understand how you feel, why you feel the way you feel before I judge you, right? Before I say anything. Try to really understand where you're coming from. We're not talking about sympathy. Sympathy is simpler. Empathy is deeper, right? It's way more intentional, right? Um, yeah, nothing too fancy here. Okay, things. Those are things that you can definitely cover by yourselves. All right, maybe stop here for a second. Communication to improve team coordination. I'm good with videos. I'm good if you write something and send it to me. Whatever, like try to find ways that you can be more effective because your goal is to communicate your message. It may look like more work if you have to use more modes, but you do. You do. If your goal is to communicate something, you have to. Use your dentist. Keep saying the same thing. Keep saying the same thing. Do not assume I understood. A lot of times I think I understood. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again. It's fine. Uh, whatever supplemental instructions, definitely. I can give you a ton of examples when I worked at Baylor, coach at Baylor, and we had logos and mottos for the year, and we had wristbands that would say this, and we would give them like the books in the beginning of the year, what they have to do, and they would put it at the front. We talked about it a lot, so we kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the same message until it was understood, and not only understood, but the athletes would like leave it, actually do what they have to do to actually leave that message, right? And the last one, very important. If you explain to me your rationale, there's a higher probability of buying. If I understand why, I know again extra work, but if I understand why I will have to do what you're telling me to do, I should appreciate it, and it should be easier for me to buy in. Okay. Um, Nothing too fancy. Confrontation and conflict. A lot of people think confrontation is negative because it may lead to conflict. Yes, it may. But confrontation is not bad. It depends on how you're going to use it, right? It happens. We need to acknowledge that. Confrontation will happen. People will not agree upon everything. Therefore, they will end up into some kind of confrontation. But see confrontation not as a way to reach conflict. See it as a way to communicate. Okay, be confrontational, not to win the argument. Be confrontational to find a solution for the common goal, for your team, for whatever you're into, right? Especially in sports side. So yeah, you can confront another player, you can confront the coach, fine, but go into that with an attitude of convince me. I think I'm right, and I can argue about it. I can give you my arguments right now, right? But if you have better arguments, good. I just I just think this is wrong. But if you have better arguments and you convince me, go ahead, be my guest. But I think we should definitely talk about that. Again, it's just communicating. That's all. Conflict prevention strategies, nothing too fancy here. You can definitely cover those by yourself. Okay, last thing, the sandwich approach. Coach Wooden, it's really hard. If you don't know who Coach Wooden is, please look him up. He has passed away. Actually, I wish I could meet him and have a conversation with him. He was, there are so many books written about him and his leadership style and his communication style, because he was the coach of the men's basketball team for UCLA, and he won 10 NCAA championships, which is pretty amazing. So he had his own ways. Again, there are books written about how he led his teams, right? And they're very, very interesting. Now, one of the things he would do was the sandwich approach. And I'll give you the Coach Wooden's example, and then I'll just talk about what I have on our slide. So let's say he would see you during practice, and you would do something that is not right. Excuse me. So he would say this. This is what you should do. This is what you did. This is what you should do. And he would show them. Positive, negative, positive. That's a sandwich approach. Let's go again. This is what you should do. This is what you did. This is what you should do. Let's go to our slide. Again, we have positive, criticism or instruction, whatever, positive again. So positive, negative, positive. So when you give feedback, it has been proven that if you do it that way, it's more effective. Like, you did an awesome job doing this. However, this thing, could improve a little bit by doing this, this, and this. Overall, though, I'm very satisfied by your attitude and the way you behaved during practice today. That's an example, right? So positive, negative, positive. That's the sandwich approach. Really great way to give feedback and communicate. It's very effective. Yeah, that's about it. I'll stop sharing now. Here I am. Have a great week. Tomorrow, office hours, Wednesday at 10, synchronous meeting. I want to see you. I want to talk with you. So if you can, please log in. In the meantime, lift intentionally, not habitually. Bye, guys.